Hi guys, welcome to the video. This guide's going to be looking at preparing a MOSFET for a front wired or rear wired M16 or M4. It also includes the takedown of an M4 and M16. The video was sponsored by Airsoft Mosfets. What does an Airsoft Mosfet do? The first thing it does is it bypasses the trigger switch. The second thing it does is it actively breaks the motor. The third thing it does is it has a thermal resettable fuse, so that when the fuse does go, all you have to do is wait and the fuse will reset itself. What are the advantages to an Airsoft Mosfet? The first thing it does is it improves the trigger response, so you get very quick and very rapid semi-automatic fire. The second thing it does is it improves the rate of fire, so you'll notice an increase in the RPS. The third thing it does is it prolongs the life of gearbox components. So we're going to take down the M4, the M16 to its gearbox. If you know how to do this, skip this bit. If you don't, pay attention. So we're going to remove the stock and the stock tube. You do this by pulling the pin at the bottom of the stock past this leverage point, and then this will allow you to slide it off. Use the appropriate screwdriver, in my case a Phillips screwdriver, to unscrew the screw that holds the stock tube to the receiver. Next step of the takedown is to remove the upper receiver. Whether your gun is front wired or rear wired, it's basically the same principle. You have to knock out the front pin. If your gun is front wired, be very careful not to damage the wires as you pull the upper receiver off. Next, we're going to remove the mag catch. Some guns have a Phillips screw, some have Allen key screws. Whatever your mag catch happens to be, use the appropriate one. Some other guns have a mechanism where you have to push it in and twist the mag catch so that it will come off. It's a sort of screw system. We're going to remove the motor plate, which is at the bottom of the pistol grip. There's always two screws here. Use the appropriate Allen key or screwdriver to remove these. Be careful not to lose the disc. Most gearboxes have the connectors where they just push on and push off the motor. Sometimes you might need to unsolder the motor connection, and sometimes you might have to unscrew a screw. Be careful with the motor connectors, they're often brittle and break, so take your time with this one. We're going to remove the pistol grip next. It's pretty simple. Sometimes there's 2 screws, sometimes there's 4 screws. If you look down there, you'll see the screws. Use the appropriate screwdriver to remove the screws. Again, be very careful not to damage or break the motor connectors. To take out the gearbox from the lower receiver, we need to knock out the rear receiver pin. This is quite simple. Then we have another middle pin that we need to knock out. Once you've knocked these two out, pry the gearbox out slowly, being very careful not to damage the motor connector wires or the wiring to the rear stock. If you find this difficult, switch between safe and semi. This makes it easier to remove the gearbox. Okay, so now we're going to look at preparing the MOSFET. Sometimes when you buy a MOSFET, they're really short, so we need to extend the wiring. This bit here looks like extending the wiring. If you can purchase a MOSFET with longer wiring, that's great because you can just cut it down at a later stage. When extending the MOSFET's wiring, you need to make sure that the new wire you use isn't too big for the little channel here. I've used 2 little small pieces to see if they'll fit through. So here we're going to extend red with red wire and black with black wire. You can judge how much wire to extend it by. I normally extend it by this much, but if you don't know how much to judge it by, use the gate wire as a guide. MOSFETs work best when there's least resistance in the wire. the connectors that your gun has right now has resistance. By removing these connectors, you therefore remove resistance from the circuitry. What I normally do is I wire the gearbox so that there's enough slack in it so that when I need to remove it, I can remove it without having to cut the wire of the MOSFET or having to use another set of connectors. So now we know how long to increase the MOSFET's wire to. All we have to do is do it. So you can follow this quick guide on how to do that. If you have a broken high cap around that's made of metal, you can use this to solder the wires together. I use a little bit of tape, I put the wire into the groove and I solder them, and then when it's done I flip them over and solder them the other side. Job done. Use some heat shrink to cover the areas you've just soldered, put on an appropriate size, and then use a lighter to seal it down. That's basically it for preparing the MOSFET and getting your gun down to its gearbox. Stay tuned for the next chapter, which will show you how to install the MOSFET to a front wired or rear wired gearbox for an M16 or an M4. Thanks for watching.
Murphy, yes, what was the thermal barricade? Get ready, guys. Charlie and the rest of you guys, move up. I'm going to thermal barricade. Guys, I got shot in the fucking nuts. Dead.